Welcome to my channel, Philly Educator. My name is Taj Utsi, and I recently retired as a school district of Philadelphia teacher for the past 25 years, primarily in mathematics. This channel is to share my experiences as a school teacher in the city of Philadelphia, as a public school teacher in the city of Philadelphia, where I primarily taught mathematics, but taught other subjects, earlier on in my career. But for the last maybe, 17 years, maybe longer than that, I was teaching. Yeah, longer than that, I was teaching primarily mathematics. But like I said, this channel is to share my experiences as a teacher in Philadelphia, the good, the bad, the memorable, and just to give you a better insight. Again, I can only speak from my personal experiences, but during these videos, I'll be sharing just my outlook on different concepts, different ideas in education. But majority of it is just, again, my experiences. So in this particular video, I just wanted to come on and talk about my first year and the challenges, the successes, the memorable moments within that first year, and just again give you insight. Like I said, the last video I did was about me, my calling to teaching, and my experiences with my student teaching, and just why I became a teacher. And again, that was back in '99 when I did the student teaching and everything. '99, 2000, my student teaching practicum. So now, my first year started actually August of 2000, and wow, that was a memorable year. Very memorable, very memorable. But just to give you a little lead up to that. So, like I said in the last video, I did my student teaching at a school called Barrett Middle School, South Philly. And again, I was born and raised in South Philly. And anybody that's familiar with, South Philly during the 80s and 90s, particularly the 80s, know that Barrett Middle School was had a rep as being one of them schools, right? That you did not want to go there if you was on the outside. Very bad reputation. And like growing up in Philly, so South Philly is split by Washington Avenue. Right? If you lived in South Philly, Washington Avenue was like the divider, and we would call it across the tracks. So we lived on the south. I lived on the south side of Washington Avenue, and then you had the north side of Washington Avenue. So everybody knew, like, Washington Avenue, we call that, we going across the tracks. So Barrett to me was across the tracks. Was across the tracks. So, like, you all knew people, on both sides of the tracks. We go across the tracks. But as a kid, man, growing up, you did not want to go to Barrett. But that's where I did my student teaching at. So, and it was wild, right? It was wild there. But like I said in the previous video, I had a great co-op teacher. I had a good experience with student teaching. But outside of that classroom, that school was wild. It lived up to the reputation that I had known growing up as a kid, right? So did the student teaching, and now I'm going through the process of selecting the school to work at for my first, actually 3 years, because the school district of Philadelphia, the contract at the time, you had to work at a school for 3 years before you can put in a voluntary transfer. So being new, fresh out of fresh out of college. We had to go down to the school board, and at the time it was on uh, the Parkway. Like right now, it's on Broad and Spring Garden, but at the time, it was on the Parkway, Benjamin Franklin Parkway. So I go there, and they put us in a room, and when you pick your schools, like voluntary picking your schools, it was based on seniority. So now I'm at the bottom of the totem pole because my first year, fresh out of school, and you got teachers that been in the game, in the system for years, so they get the first picks. So in my mind, right, prior to going down there, I'm like, all right, it was a couple of schools I had in mind, and most of them was in South Philly because that's where I lived at. I'm still living with my mom at the time, so I didn't want to go too far. I wanted to stay in South Philly. So I'm like, all right, I had a good experience at Barrett. Barrett was one of the schools I would have picked. So I go in there, hope, praying, like, all right, hopefully Barrett's there. So I'm like, all right, get down there, time to pick. What do you know? Barrett's on the list. And it was actually another school was on the list too. I had in mind, Masterman, but I didn't want to go there. Master was a good school. I didn't want to go there though. I wanted to do Barrett. Let me do Barrett. Oh man, so I'm excited, man. And first year teacher, right? And those that watch the channel that are teachers, they can bear witness, man. You going in there, bright eyed, bushy tail. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change the world. I'm going there. I'm going to make a difference in these kids' lives. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So many ideas going, and that's good, right? Going there with that excitement, it's good. But then reality steps in. So start off, and what they do prior to the school year, the teachers always get time to go in to set up the room, have meetings, things of that nature. And that first year, like I said, I was all in, all in. Like I was spending my own money, and a lot of teachers do that anyway. But that first year of teaching, I spent a lot of money just to get myself situated. Like a lot of money on supplies and books, like workbooks from like myself for the students, because again, at the time with teaching, at during that time, you can be very creative. Right? They gave you a curriculum, and then you could just do your own thing, right? Do your own thing. So pretty much each classroom was following the same curriculum, but the implementation of the curriculum or the resources used to implement whatever concepts or skills that students needed to learn varied based upon the classroom. But again, I loved it because it allowed you to express your creativity, engage the students more into the lessons. Much different back when I first started than at the end of my career. So yeah, I spent a lot of money, man. I spent a lot of money on a lot of school supplies because I believe at the time they did. I mean, we always got allotments, but I believe at the time it might have only been like $50, right? The when I say allotment, I mean the school district gave you some money to buy your supplies, and I believe at the time it might have been like $50, and you had to get the receipts, submit them, so you can be, won't take it out your future check. I spent way more than $50. I spent a lot. I would go to this teacher supply store I love. I would go there, get everything, like from crayons to posters, bulletin board paper, construction paper, everything. Like it was, I spent a lot of money, but it was worth it to me. That's because that's what I value, right? First year teaching, it was It was I enjoyed it, but it was not what I expected it to be. And first, the room that I had, I might have had about 25 to 30 kids in the room, fifth grade. The room that I had was so small, it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how small this room was. It was like a storage closet, a big storage closet. And I had tables. I wanted tables. I thought the group work thing was, easier for me to manage, opposed to sitting in desk. But the room was so small. It was like we was on top of each other, man. That room was so small. And my student teacher, the co-op teacher that I did my student teaching with, she, tried to help me out with getting me into another room, but administration was like, no, this is it, all we got. So it was like cool. I was just excited to have a room, but the room was so small, it was ridiculous. So first year teaching, man, highs and lows of it. It was memorable, but one thing I would say is from my experience of first year teaching, I did not get a lot of support outside of the co-op teacher that I work with and my student teaching, and some of the teachers, a couple of teachers there, maybe, and I'll say maybe one other teacher, man, and a counselor. Other than that, they had deans, they were okay, but first year teaching, I did not get a lot of support. And I noticed that with a lot of first year teachers in Philadelphia, a lot of schools I worked at, there aren't in the early stages. I think now they kind of changed it, but when you go in straight from college into the classroom, or you go and have a student teaching experience into the classroom, it's a whole different ball game when you on your own, because you're you're like fresh meat, and these kids know it. They know it, man. And I noticed like kids will only do what they know they can get away with. And as a first year teacher, one thing, you know, I notice in myself is you how can I put this? You try to appease the students. And I was young, like I was like 24 maybe. Yeah, 23, 24. So I was young. And these kids are like fifth grade, they're like 10, 9, 10, 11 years old. I had an older kid in my class too, but you try to really appease them, and which is not always good, especially when because if you start doing that, then you open the floodgates, man, to a lot of things where you find it hard to say no to, and it was rough as a first year teacher. It really was, but I know I enjoyed it because I taught every subject, so I can be very creative. Again, I was very creative in the classroom. I would do a lot of activities. We'll play math games and Jeopardy and all that other stuff. I mean, it was really good. I liked it. I did enjoy it as far as the creativity aspect of it. But it was very hard to do some activities because as a first year teacher, again, you try to appease them. That's what I can only speak for me. That's what I did. Like I didn't want to say no a lot of times. It was crazy, man. It was crazy. It was crazy. So I found myself, the kids listened, but it was very difficult for me, that classroom management piece. Like I said, I had a good co-op teacher for my student teaching who had excellent classroom management. But what I didn't realize that that's not something that just happens right away. It doesn't. It takes time. You trial and error, doing things, and you find yourself evolving over time. I found myself evolving over time with my management because my first year, man, I would find myself doing a lot of yelling, a lot of yelling, and that's not even in my character to yell, but I felt myself doing a lot of yelling that first year. That first year, I found myself doing a lot of yelling, and it was bad, man. I would like stay after school, like frustrated, but and that a lot of it because again, I think for me because I did so well at student teaching, some of the staff members or like those that were supposed to be support for first year teachers, they didn't feel as though I really needed it. But I was in a classroom with a teacher that had great control. So, but now when you in your own classroom, again, it's different. So, the school I was at, Barrett, had a main building and an annex. The annex was on 16th or forget, but on one side of the tracks, like I said earlier, and the main building was on the other side of the track. So it was a nice distance away. But administration, the assistant principal, one of it had two assistant principals and a principal. One of the assistant principals was at the annex building, and this woman, she stayed in her office the whole like I never seen her except like in the morning time, like in the hallways. It's like if I was coming to work, when I was coming to work, going to the main office, that's when I would see see her when I was signed in. Other than that, I didn't see her. I did not see her. She did not come in my classroom once that I recall in the 3 years, my first 3 years of teaching. Not once. She didn't come in to observe me. She didn't come in to like just see how I was doing, especially that first year. Like that, because that first year, that's a crucial year for a teacher. Because I've seen so many teachers in my 25 years. That first year, I've seen several teachers just walk off. They just walked off, and even after that, like I did some research. The average career of a teacher is maybe 5 years in Philadelphia. Like 5 years. That's the average length of a career. So those first couple of years are very critical. And when you don't have support from administration, you feel like you all by yourself. And at times I felt like that. Thankfully, like I said, I had the co-op teacher. She was a dean there. That she became a dean at the annex building. So she would, check in with me. And then there was a counselor, older guy, and he was great too. Like I said, I did a lot of yelling. I did a lot of yelling because I was like, man, I felt so alone that first year, right? And but he would come in and do different classroom management techniques that helped me, not just that year, but down the line also. And I saw the way the kids responded to him. He was very calm, and that's my demeanor. I'm very calm, but for some reason, that first year, man, I don't know. I just acted completely out of character when it came to managing the classroom. Like the kids, they respected me, and they liked me. But for some reason, man, I don't. It was new to me, right? Because all I had to do in my student teaching was just teach. I didn't have to worry about managing. But I learned that if you can't manage a classroom, you won't be able to teach. You won't be able to teach. And no matter how many conversations I would have with the kids, it was like they knew, like, yo, you this guy, yeah, he cool, but we gonna try to take advantage of him. And I allowed that, right, to an extent, to an extent. Like they just wasn't doing whatever they wanted to do, right? There was learning taking place in the classroom, but it was a challenge. It really was a challenge. It really was a challenge. And I would say to any individual going into teaching, if you're in your first year or early years, you want to make sure you have your classroom management. You set the law and the rules from day one. And I notice a lot of times first year teachers, they try to be friends with the kids. And I learned that, we're not here to be their friends. Yes, you can be friendly, but we're not here to be their friends. And I had to learn that. I learned that after it didn't take me long to learn that my first year. But I remember the older teacher saying, don't smile till November. Don't smile. It was like, what kind of like advice is that, right? But anyway, but yeah, that first year, man, anyone going into the teaching, that first year is it's a make or break year, because that'll test if you this is what you really want to do. And that's what it did. Like, it was a time that I was going to quit, and it was because there was this student that I had. I'm not sure if I can say his name or not, so I won't say it, but I remember his name. And this kid, man, this he was like I said, I taught fifth grade, so it was like nine, yeah, maybe like 10-year old, 11, 9, 10, 11. But he was a little older. He might have been like 12, because I believe he got left back. But I remember the first day of school, I remember taking roll. He wasn't there. But when I called his name, all the kids was like, he in this class? It was crazy. They was like, he bad. He bad. I'm like, all right, he's just a kid. How bad can he be? But when he came in, the kids wasn't lying. This boy was getting suspended almost every other day. He would be in a fight, whether like in the cafeteria, in the hallways. There was times he was fighting, and I had to break up fights in the classroom with this kid, and he was very like advanced for his age. Very inappropriate, cussing, just you name it. This boy was bad. He was troubled. I'm gonna say that he was troubled. He was troubled. He was troubled. And the crazy thing about it is he really took a liking to me, though. And that's the thing. Like, I notice a lot of kids that, are quote unquote bad. When you really sit down and get to know them, like they really like they just kids, right? They just got situations they might be dealing with at home, because that's all teachers see. And this is one thing I also learned, that like, as a teacher, man, you have to provide like a safe space, comforting environment, because a lot of these children, not a lot, some of these children that they coming in from environments that just completely just chaos. So you coming from home to school, and you got teachers yelling at you. Your mom just got finished yelling at you. Your dad or whoever just got finished yelling at you. Now you coming to school, and now the teacher yelling at you. And that's like, I learned that, right? Because like I said, that first year I yelled a lot, but after that, I said I can't keep going on like this, right? Yelling, that ain't working. But thank God I had that one teacher, that counselor. He really showed me some things, right? And then I worked in this summer program also outside of the district called Freedom School, and I learned some things there as well that I started implementing, and they worked. You just got to be consistent. That's another thing with teaching. We'll get into that later. But this guy, this kid, I almost quit because of this kid. He would come every day, and it was like he would come late, and it's like when he came in the room, it's like he took all the life out of me, man. I allowed him to. He would come in just loud, just trying to draw attention, cussing. It was like, come on, bro. Like, are you serious? Every day we got to do this with you. He would come in. I remember one day he came in with this big old family size, party size bag of sour cream and onion chips, with like one of them big old gallon of Hawaiian punches. and a big old cup. This dude was crazy. And he sat there at his table, put his feet up on the table, poured himself. I said, "Bro, you can't do that. What are you doing?" He's like, "Wow, what's wrong?" Like, are you serious? That's the type of stuff he would do. He would get suspended almost every. I'm telling you, like every other day or every week, he would be suspended. And that's another thing as far as interventions. That's what I say. The public school system in Philadelphia, they did a disservice to these students. But anyway, the straw that broke the camel's back, as they often say. He came in one day. He's like, they used to call me Mr. T, right? My first few years of teaching, I told the kids call me Mr. T with my last name. I didn't feel like constantly correcting them, but I learned that's another thing also of importance in how the kids perceive you. So they would call me Mr. T. So he was like, Mr. T, I ain't never gonna get suspended again. I said, all right. He's like, yeah, I promised my dad that I wouldn't get suspended, this, that, and the other. I'm gonna be on my best behavior. I said, all right, good. So, like I said, this boy was so inappropriate, and he did something to this little girl, and I said, man, I gotta write you up for this. I gotta write you up. So he was, and at the time, like I said, being a new teacher, like I would just write kids up at my desk, and I let them see. I let everybody see that I'm writing them up. That's not good practice either. I had the pink slip, but I wrote them up, and I said, "See, this is your pink slip." That was not good practice, but first year teacher, you really don't. You just winging it a lot of it, man. When I did that, that boy, that boy got up out of his seat, came over to my desk, and was like, "Why are you gonna do that? My dad did. My dad this. My dad that. Why are you gonna do that?" I just sat there. This kid took everything that was on my desk and just wiped it all off, broke things, started throwing things, spit on the chalkboard. He didn't spit on me, but he was spitting on the chalkboard, then took the trash can and dumped it all on me. Just dumped all the trash out on me and then threw the trash can and ran out the room. And I'm just sitting there. All the kids is looking like, man. And that day I was fasting on that day too, man. I was fasting on that day. I remember that like it was yesterday. He ran out the room and I started to chase him. But I said, no, I just sat there, calmly got up, called the main office, spoke to the same assistant principal that never came out of her room, never came out of her office, and told her, look, such and such did this. If he come back in my classroom, I'm not coming back to this school. I'm done. I'm done. Sure enough, though, they didn't bring him back to my classroom. They put him in another classroom with one of the teachers that was very supportive. His name is Mr. Brown, and he was a big guy, man, and he didn't play. He was a sixth grade teacher, but they sat this kid in his room for the rest of the school year. And Mr. Brown, he didn't play, man. He was a very seasoned teacher, and he didn't play. And that kid, he got to that room, and I guess he didn't like it, but he would stop by every now and then to my room and say, "Mr. T, I'm sorry." He apologized. "Mr. T, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, man. You my favorite teacher." I'm looking like I'm your favorite teacher. I would hate to see what you do to your least favorite teachers. But that first year though, I grew a lot after that from that experience. That experience taught me a lot. Taught me about being patient. It taught me to have that balance where you're friendly, but you're not their friend. Student teaching, I observed that in student teaching, but it's not really until you get on your own as a first year teacher that you realize this is a different beast. Teaching is a different beast. It's not for the weak. It's not for the weak minded. Because and now like as years went on, looking back, like I can like at other first year teachers, I can look at a first year teacher and know if they're gonna last or not. I can simply because or I can know what type of year they're gonna have. You know, only simply because I see the way they interact, because that's how I was. Like I'm tried again, tried to be friends with the kids, sharing a little bit too much information about my personal life. And there's nothing wrong with showing the kids that, you know, you're real students, that you're, you know, you're a real person, but you know, it's some things like really don't need to be shared. And I didn't know that at the time. And that wasn't like nothing inappropriate, but it was like, okay, they got too friendly with me. I allowed them to become too friendly with me. But I mean, outside of that, the experience was great. I enjoyed my first year teaching, like the different activities we would do. You know, very engaging. The kids loved it. Like I would create different characters to, you know, like props and things of that nature to get them engaged, and they loved it. They loved it, man. But one thing I would say, the classroom management is key. If you can't control a classroom, you're gonna have problems. And I see that even with, I mean, I seen that first year. I seen other first year teachers. I mean, they struggled worse than I did. One teacher, he was an older man first year. He transitioned from one career to another. But man, this guy, it was like you were gonna give yourself a heart attack. He would throw chairs. He would yell all. I mean, every day, all day. I thought I was. I mean, I yelled, but I wasn't like that, man. Like, man, yeah. I remember one time, like, and also somebody had. I taught every subject, so science was one of them. And being in holiness, the religion, faith that I'm in, right? You can teach the subjects, but you just have to really be. I had to be really aware of certain things. So, like for instance, I taught science, and I taught every subject. But when I was teaching science, I had to teach about uh, the Big Bang Theory. So again, I told the kids, look, this is a theory. It's what man believes, but this is not reality. This is not true. So I still taught the facts, what they, not the facts, but that's not fact. I taught the theory, right? I taught the theory. Nothing wrong with that. You're just sharing the information. But I told them, look, even though this is in the book, this is not true because it's a theory. And then one student said, well, what do you believe, Mr. T? So that was my opportunity to share what I believe. There's one girl was after I shared what I told him, look, I believe God created everything. I don't believe the Big Bang Theory. I believe God created everything. This one girl said, ooh, you can't teach us that. You can't teach us about God. I said, I'm not teaching you nothing. I'm just sharing, answer a question he asked me, the student asked me. But that's what I mean. Like, you really have to find that balance in teaching because, you know, with my religious beliefs, some things I couldn't like partake in, like Christmas and Halloween stuff. They were always saying, we having a Christmas party, Halloween, all nope, we ain't doing all that. Not doing that. So that's what I mean. You really, with teaching, it does present some challenges to, your walk if that's the field you want to go in. But that's with any profession. But that first year teaching, I like I said, my first 3 years at that school, Barrett, no support whatsoever outside of like the dean, the shield that I had worked with. And like I said, the one year, my first year, that counselor, but after that, he was gone. But as far as from administration, And that's the thing, man. I've realized that when you talk about teachers, and especially first year, they need support. And I'm telling you, a lot of schools that I worked at, administration was not supportive of them. They would come down on them if they did something wrong, but as far as guidance and uh, direction, I really didn't see much of that my first few years. Now, as years progressed and I began, observing other first year teachers, I noticed that they did get a little bit more support from outside, right? From outside. And then a lot of cases, like towards my latter end of teaching, administration would, pair them up with teacher buddies. But, you know, it's different when you have administration, when you feel like administration is on your side as opposed to trying to get you all the time. And I'm not knocking administrators' principles, right? I'm not, but I can say this: out of the 25 years of teaching, I probably had about maybe about 7 different principals. I can say one was really thorough. One in 25 years of teaching, one was really thorough. One. I had so many assistant principals out of those 25 years of teaching, maybe about 15, maybe 10 to 15. But I can say maybe one, maybe two was thorough. So, and again, I'm not knocking administrators, but what I'm saying is with teachers, they, especially first year teachers, they need support. They need support. And this is why a lot of teachers quit. The lifespan of a teacher is so short. Like I said, I believe in Philly, like I said, it's like 5 years. 5 years. And a lot of that is because of the challenges that come with teaching, which is expected as in any profession, but the support. But yeah, that was just, just come on and share my experience. First year teaching, my first year teaching, I enjoyed it, but again, it was a rude awakening. As they say they just throw you in the fire. That's what it was. I was thrown in the fire, and you just have to learn pretty much on your own. No matter how many uh, meetings you go to, right? And they talk about this, talk about that, until you get into that classroom and you on your own. Them meetings, that don't mean the meetings ain't doing nothing. When you get into that class, like training for a fight, yeah, and then when you get into the ring and then you get hit, it become real. That's how teaching was. Like you can do all the training and go take all the classes, get all the degrees, whatever, all the professional development. But when you get in that classroom and you get hit with reality of having 30 kids, 33 kids in a classroom, that's when it become real. That's when it become real because there are things that happen that you can't even plan. You can't even plan for. There's no way you can plan for some of the things that you see going on in classrooms. Yeah, that first year of teaching, man, I enjoyed it. I did. I stayed for 24 more, so it must have been something to it. But like I said, if I can do it all over again, one thing I would definitely do in that first year was just be firm. Be firm. But I had to learn that. I had to learn that because I noticed if you're not firm, the kids will run all over you. They'll run all over you. And they didn't run all over me, but they got away with a lot. They got away with a lot. Man, they got away with a lot, man. But it's amazing though seeing my growth, because as time went on, it was like kids came. I didn't have to raise my voice, and the kids would always say that. They would say, I stopped letting them call me Mr. T. I told them as after I left that first school, the 3 years, I started to look Mr. Yutzi, and the reason why is because again, and to me, when you use little nicknames like that, Mr. T or Miss S or whatever, it makes to me it makes them look at you from a friendlier version, as opposed to the authoritative figure in the classroom. So and as time went on, I stopped yelling. I just would have to. All I have to do is just raise my hand, or just say certain little things and grab the kids' attention, and they was cool. They would come, Mister, you so calm. You never yell. No need to. My first year though, man, but it takes time. So again, if you looking in and getting into teaching, number one piece of advice I would give: have that classroom management, consistent, because otherwise you ain't gonna be able to do your job right effectively. I would see teachers as time went on in the hallway, the way they be like friendly with the kids. I said, oh boy, and sure enough, they ain't last. But that was me. So yeah, it's just a little insight. This channel just giving my insight, just my sharing my experiences, and sharing some stories. I got a whole lot more stories. That was just my first year. I got 25 years worth of stories, tales that won't even believe. And I'll get into a lot of other different topics with education and see, how it goes. Just again, I'm just here to just, give insight, because a lot of people just look at teachers as, all right, uh, teach kids your ABCs, one, two, threes. Y'all got summers off, holidays off, weekends off. How hard can it be? Man, teachers should be one of the highest paid professions, up there with police officers, firemen, doctors. It should be up there. That should be one of the highest paid professions, because it's a lot of mental stress with it. You're dealing with other people's kids. And that's another thing, the parents. I'm gonna make a video about that also. But you deal with some parents, man. Most of the parents I dealt with were very supportive, but you got some parents, it's like, wow, I can't believe this. So yeah, thank you, for tuning in. I hope, that gave you better insight on what it is to be a teacher, and from my experience in Philadelphia. And I appreciate you listening to Philly Educator, and we'll see you next time. Peace.